Hi, good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are in the world. But welcome to this FoodSense webinar. There's not going to be a lot of talk. It's actually going to be quite a lot of demonstrations. Um, I'll stop sharing the screen just for a second and just kind of show you that what I have in front of me is the FoodSense Generation 4. I have some chili sensors in front of me. I have the app. I have pipettes and um, balances, vortexes, etc. So there's mostly going to be real-time demoing this afternoon. So don't be disappointed if you are a particular fan of PowerPoint and bullet points, etc. This will be more of a live demonstration. I'll just give you a kind of quick background on this. So we are going to talk about the FoodSense Generation 4. It's most famous for measuring the capsaicin in chili type products. And I'm sure many of you have seen, but we do have lots of material on our various, on our YouTube channel, really, doing things like testing of whole chilies. In fact, I've got some Mike's hot sauce here, testing kind of things that are slightly, let's say, more unusual. So I think honeys are quite unusual, mayos are quite unusual. Done some spicy ketchups as well, I believe. Done some chili oils. So all sorts of different matrices. So rather than, as I say, talking about what we're going to do, the plan is to actually just do demonstrations. So I'll stop sharing that screen and I'll actually share the what's essentially in front of me. So in front of me, I've got the FoodSense Generation 4. That's in Bluetooth connection with the app. I will explain the science, but I'll explain the science through the context of demonstration. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take a particular sample that I've got here. Now this sample is quite viscous in terms of it's not a particularly runny sample. Now this is a demonstration, so this means I'll do things today that I possibly wouldn't normally do. You know, I might be a bit quicker with my pipetting and a little bit clumsier than I normally would do. But I want to do everything essentially in real time as well. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to sort of walk up and say, all right, somebody's given me a sample. It's essentially unknown to me. So I want to, how do I put this? I want to sort of test its Scoville heat rating. So let me sort of run in and do a quick test on that. So I'll take one of these vials. I mean, sometimes they're called Eppendorf tubes, but strictly speaking, they're just centrifuge tubes, but they're just about the right size and shape for the kind of work that, or the handleability, let's say. So what I'll do then is I'm going to take this sample and I'm going to take out 100 microliters of the chili. So I've got a 100 microliter pipette and I've taken out 100 microliters and then I'll just put it into this vial here. I know many of you've got obviously lab experience, so but I'm just kind of just showing you in some ways that it is actually quite straightforward to do this kind of work. So I put the little tube down like that. I'm just going to get a 900 microliters of buffer. So with the system comes chili buffer. I've decanted some into a little beaker here, and I just need 900 microliters of this. So again, no rocket science involved here. I'll just close that lid off. All right, so I've got my buffer plus my sample. I'm now going to vortex it. I think this is probably one of the most critical stages, really, because strictly speaking, this is really a capsaicin sensor. So you can appreciate that you kind of got to get the capsaicin out of your sample and into the liquid. So you get a kind of physical check there, or visual check there, I should say, that it's starting to happen. But I can still see that there's some material in the bottom of that tube. So I'll just do, what many of you would just do, just kind of give it just trying to release. There we are. I've released the material from the bottom. Now I'll go back and give it another vortexing. Okay, should be super straightforward. All right, so I've got my sample now. I've got a clean sensor in there. I'm just going to grab myself a 50 microliter syringe. No, not syringe, sorry, pipette. And then I will go ahead and test it. I think one of the advantages of FoodSense Generation 4 is actually the speed of sample prep. The fact that it doesn't need much sample, you may think, well, that's not much of an advantage because I've got plenty of sample. But when you're handling quite small volumes like this, it actually does make it quite quick and easy to do. You can see the footprint that I'm sort of working in, is quite tiny actually. And everything I would ever need is probably within this footprint. A balance if it's powdery or viscous, the vortexer, the pipette. So I'll just put the sample on. First thing I'm going to do is just check the name here because I want to. Everyone who has the FoodSense Generation 4 also gets access to what's something called Djuli, a Premier. It's a cloud system, and you'll see the power of Djuli in a second. So, but the reason I'm showing that is because that will help me track down my data later on. So let me just put my sample onto here, which I've done. I know what I've named it. I'm just going to go continue. This is an important one. You don't, because I've only done a 1 in 10 dilution, I will choose 1 in 10. If it was well, I start with 1 in 10 because that's what I did. But if I haven't, if it's, let's say, too concentrated with capsaicin, it will tell me. So later on in this live demo, you will see samples which are hotter. So I'll just go start measurement, and off it goes. So it's kind of live tracking at the moment. So I can kind of see these little peaks and troughs, and this is kind of telling me that, I know it's only with experience, but that was kind of telling me that capsaicin is appearing. It's given me a Scoville heat unit rating. So I'm just going to do a couple of things. So I'm going to hold that up to you because I want to kind of say to you, if you've got somebody in a lab and they just need essentially, a quick check on, how hot something is, then you can see that, you can prepare the sample. This is a mild sample, it's only 3,800 Scoville heat units. So this is definitely mild. I do have a range of, let's say, samples in front of me. But also this is an important part that it says, it gives you the result, 3,800. It also says upload complete, and upload complete means something. So I'm going to share my screen with you now, if I can remember how to do it, which is here. Upload complete means that it's actually gone, the data has gone to the cloud. So here's my A10 sample here. I've just put A in there because A was what I have it labeled on the side, and 10 just mentally reminds me that I did a 1 in 10 dilution. So that's just for my own convenience. There's nothing, you can essentially name it as you wish. And then if I zoom in here, so I can understand that if you've got people in the lab, they may not want to engage with this part of the system and they can just write down the number. But there are some useful parts here, which is I can see my raw signal. So what I'm looking for here is, you notice, I mean, if I'm sure many of you got a science background, you're like, wow, that's very distinctive. What's going on here? And you'll see this common theme throughout the demos today. This is peak 1 of capsaicin. This is peak 2 of capsaicin. This is peak 3 of capsaicin. So you can get a raw signal. So if you ask the question, is there capsaicin in there? I'm very sorry, but that's a very distinctive shape. That it didn't come from nowhere. That's come from capsaicin itself. Peak 1, peak 2, and peak 3. You can then see that we're analyzing it. So you can see that we actually know what the peak height was, and you can see the way we kind of find the peak height there. And we've then converted that then into Scoville heat units. It's also got some, especially if you're in a quality system, let's say, I can't see your data, but you've got a username and password which protects your data. And so we have the file name, we have the today's date, we have the time, because I'm in London, we have the time in London, and we also have the operator as well. So the quality manager can essentially see what was tested, the time and date, exactly what was tested, they can then just also have the result. Okay, there's the results. They didn't need to necessarily write it down on a piece of paper. It's actually just saved in the cloud. But they can also do that kind of, that glance at the, did everything go correctly? And it's like, yeah, I can see, what I was expecting for this sample. And, the human is very good at sort of pattern recognition. So that's a very distinctive pattern for capsaicin. You can also, just FYI, you can also export this as a PDF and sort of save it somewhere else, because not everyone will necessarily have. So I could export that, and everything will come down as a PDF, and you can open that up and store it online. I can't believe you would print it and store it in a folder, but just FYI, it is, you can kind of have a record for that. Let's say going forward. Right. Now there's some other nice features about this as well. Just FYI, some of us then, if we need to go in there and kind of get a sense of what did that user do, I could even tell you that actually that was done with a 1 in 10 dilution. So we can find out all sorts of details about this, about how this sample was taken. So to summarize it, we've got the raw signal, we've got the processed result, we've got the operator details, and we've even got details about how they actually prepared the sample, including like, what kind of dilution did this person use? And they used it, for example, a 1 in 10 dilution. So what I'm going to do now is I'll stop sharing that screen for a second and go to a different sample. So as I say, everything's going live at the moment. So I'll take that sensor off. I'll put a new sensor on. So I'll do that now. And then I will take a different sample. Now these samples they're quite viscous, so they're not necessarily the easiest things to handle. They actually go up in viscosity, these particular samples. Now what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to grab a 100 microliter pipette. Again, I have to kind of pipette up the sample. So here's my tube. Let me get in here with my there we go. Right, so I've got my I realized something. It looks a little short actually, and because I used a 50 microliter pipette. So let me just grab that again, and I'll grab it with a 100 microliter pipette. This time, I thought it looked a little smaller, can I say, than last time. So I'll grab my. I just saw a question jump up, and I will try and take a look at that question when I'm not in mid pipetting. So let me just grab 100 microliters, which I will do. Right, there we go. Okay, so that looks a bit more like 100 microliters. I will put that sample down into that tube. Now I can see that I've left a little bit of material actually in that pipette. So I'm sure many of you will know this kind of trick. But what I'll do is I'm just going to put 900 microliters of buffer into that, which I will now do. Because I think you'll know this trick anyway, but because I've left a bit of material in there, and obviously leaving material in there means that I could end up under testing this, and I sincerely hope I'm pretty sure I picked up the B, but if I didn't, my apologies. So I'm just running that back and forth like that. Nothing super clever about that, but then I just managed to get a bit more of that material out of that. Let me just close that lid, which I'm doing. Yep, that's clicked. Okay, so same procedure as last time. I can see the material in there. I'm just going to vortex that up really quickly. Again, it's kind of just flick that out the bottom. Right, almost there, I think. Right, a bit more vortexing. Yeah, okay, good. All right, so I think I've got that. I'm just going to move a couple of samples out my way because otherwise I end up grabbing the wrong samples, etc. So I've got a clean sensor in there. I just want to be able to trace this. So let me just go and change this name to B so I can essentially find it up in the cloud later on. So I've called that B now. Go done, back, right. So I'm almost ready to go. I'm just going to grab a 50 microliter syringe. I keep saying syringe, a 50 microliter pipette. So I've got my 50 microliter pipette. I will grab my sample. I'm just going to give it one final vortex. It looks a bit, obviously I want this as homogeneous as possible. When I say, I want the sample to be, as representative as possible. So I don't want layers or it's settling. So I've grabbed the sample, 50 microliters, put it on, which I've done. I'm going to hit continue. Again, I don't really need to do this because it's still this one's only a 1 in 10 dilution, but I'll start the measurement and off it goes. Now, if there's too much capsaicin in, I can see already that peak's actually a bit more intense than last time. Now I understand that that's me, using kind of experience, but you soon get kind of used to this kind of. There we go. That's it. That's interesting. See, too high, dilute more, because I said it was actually a little bit. I saw the peak go up a bit then, so I just want to show you that it can guide you. So what I'll do now is I'm just going to share really quick by coming to here. Going to reports. I'll just do a quick refresh. There's my B10, so I can see my B10 here. And I can just see that it's just a bit too much. Just a bit too much. So the machine has kind of said, okay, you're a bit, I don't want to say a bit hot, a bit too much capsaicin in it. So he wants me to do a dilution. So what I'll do now is, it's not really something that, the way I'm about to do this, I'm about to take the 1 in 10, I'll vortex it, I'll take out a sample, I'll dilute that and make it basically a 1 in 100. So what I'll do is I'll flick that sensor out of the way. I'll grab a clean tube. I'll grab a 100 microliters. Now, of course, you don't always know how much dilution to do before you start doing it. But of course, once you're kind of used to your batches, then you can have a bit more of a sort of instinct to it. But it was only just a bit too much. So what I'll now do is I'll take that sample out, maybe a bit of vortexing right before I did that to kind of make sure that was homogeneous, but it's too late now. I've gone ahead and done it. I'll put the sample in like that. I'm now going to grab 900 microliters. So appreciate, I'm taking a 1 in 10 dilution and taking it to 1 in 100 dilution. In it goes. As you can see, this is just simple arithmetic, really. There's nothing super clever here. All right, I'm just going to close that cap down, which I've done. All right, so I've got my sample. I'll give it a quick vortex. Right, I'm just going to label this. Just going to label this so I can find it. So I'll go to my test settings. I'll go B100 because that'll help me identify that particular data. I'm going to grab a 50 microliter pipette tip, which I will do. So just going to put a sensor onto here. Close that up, put that on like that. Done. Right, and then I will go continue. Now I've done a 1 in 100 dilution, so I'm just going to make sure that says 100 there, which it now does, and I'll do start, and off we go. Okay, and then at the end, then I'll be able to A, get a result, and B, show you that result in the cloud as well. I still appreciate there's a question there. So it's come back at 8,180, and I will show you the data on that. I just want to check a question quickly that's actually online here. What is the fat content of the sample being tested? Just FYI, we have tested oils. We've also tested mayos, and mayos are quite fatty. So I don't believe, now the reason I can say this statement is I think fats basically form, I want to say micelles, little globules of fat within themselves. So fat, um, you so these are, I'm not going to say that these are particularly fatty or particularly oily, but we have online, if you look, we have tested oils, which I appreciate oils not fat, but we also have tested mayo as well. So we have tested things which with a fairly good fat content. Now, what I want to do now is, again, it's a simple, somebody can just say, okay, I've got the result, 8,180 Scoville heat units. I'm quite happy with that. But of course, and I realized I did all of that whilst having not, it wasn't maybe that clear to you because I was sharing this at the same time. But that said, let me go here, do a quick refresh, which I'm now doing. I'll find the result here, which I'm now doing. And you could look at remember I did a 1 in 100 dilution. So this can show you sometimes how crazy, not crazy, but how strong a signal capsaicin really has. Which brings me back to that comment about fats and oils and stuff. The one advantage you have, let's say when you're making chili products, is intrinsically you're often actually making them so they are hot. So you find out that capsaicin is actually one of those sort of um, higher concentration molecules actually in that sample. So let's look at this then. So we've got peak 1, peak 2, and peak 3. I'm very sorry, but there you go. That's a very distinctive, shape again, which is indicative of that's that capsaicin. You can see the way we've analyzed it. So, as a quality manager, you could glance at that and say, okay, I can see the peak. I can see, that they found the peak height quite nicely. I got my result, which is what we had on the phone as well. So people in the lab can write that number down or be happy with that number, or people in production. And then but at the same time, you've got it all saved up here. You've also again got the time, date, sample ID. We can again export it if we so wish, give it an easier name. So you can have that as a PDF, and that will just come out as a PDF. You can store that electronically if you so wish, and you've got all the details. If there's a bit of a question as to how that person actually set the sample, just FYI, by the way, you can actually put in here, I am testing. You can start putting all sorts of details in here. So you've actually got a bit more of a log of actually what happened here, sense it all, etc. I will hit save on that. It just says incomplete because I haven't filled in all of the fields, but it's just saving that. And then again, I can go in here, I can have a quick look. I can go, okay, let's have a little look. And we did a 1 in 100 dilution on that. So now I'm going to, again, I'm going to stop sharing this because it's a bit easier for you to see my screen, because I realized last time I didn't actually stop sharing. So now my screen hopefully is a bit bigger. I take out the sensor. I'll put in a fresh sensor, take it out, one in. Right, so the sensor's in there. I've got another sample here. So this one is, I believe, is hotter. This is more viscous. As I say, I've got the balance here because if I need to, if something's just a bit too viscous, and many samples are, they're either powdery or just too much thickness to them, then I can't necessarily always pipette them, and that's okay because then I just weigh them out on the on a little balance as well. So what I'm going to do is grab 100 microliters of this. Now, sometimes you can get a sense of how hot some things are because you've either tested them before, or you've tested them before, or you actually just. I'm not asking you to sniff samples, but I can. This will start to make me sort of sneeze and cough a little bit. So what I'll do is I'm just going to take out 100 microliters of this. Right. Now, if I was not doing this demo, I may make a point of being a little bit more cautious because I've got a little extra stuff on that, but it's a live demonstration, so forgive me a little bit as I do this. I'm not necessarily going to scrape out what's on the side because it will just end up putting extra in there and leading to a precision, let's say, that I've actually added more than I thought I did. But I've got my sample in there. I will do the same. I will add 900 microliters of buffer. So take the sample, take the back here, do that. Right, so there's my sample sitting at the bottom like that. Just close the cap up. Right, cap's closed up. I'll just give it a quick vortex. I'll give it a visual inspection in a minute to make sure that we're truly kind of mixing it up. Again, it's the same thing. It's just stuck to the bottom there. Doesn't happen with all samples, but these particular ones seem to be quite sticky. Somebody just asked me, did I say if the buffer was ethanol? And I definitely didn't say that the buffer was ethanol. I'm not going to. I was going to say the buffer is definitely not ethanol. Okie dokes. So I've got it sort of suspended here. What I will do now is I think, yeah, I've actually got a clean sensor in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put 50 microliters onto the sensor. Yeah, somebody's just asking, when you've got a chili powder, it is a very good idea to let it rest for some time. The hardest part of using a system like this is the sample prep, and the solid samples, you need to really ensure that you've got that capsaicin out of it. So what I've done now is I've got 50 microliters into that. Actually, I'm just going to name this before I go too far, because then I can show you the result pretty quickly. So let me just name this so I can find it. What I like about this system is you kind of, there's the traceability of it. And you may not realize, well, no, you will realize that I'm a scientist, so I do like to see the data. So I've named it, I've called it C10 because the 10 will just remind me that I did a 1 in 10 dilution. I'll put the sample on. I'll go continue. I don't need to change this, but I will just show you that I'm emphasizing that I'm pressing the 10, which I'm doing. Start measurement. And off it goes. Look, see the way that's gone flat line like that? That's, so it's just that you'll get familiar with this as well, but you can see, flat line like that. That means there's quite a lot of capsaicin in there. And I'm doing it on purpose to kind of show you that it will guide you, so it's not a mistake. It's purposeful, but it says upload complete, too high, dilute more. So I want to just show you again that this is a quite intelligent system, that it doesn't just leave people with bad data. But I can show you what that actually looks like. So we call this sample C. So let's just go in there and do a quick refresh. There's sample C. I can see it there. Same story as before. What I mean by that is date and time, so you can tell this is live. The operator at the time, boom, it's like, the quality manager could just kind of come in, have a look at that and say, all right, well, actually, that's very hot, not very hot, but it's hot. It's very, it's intense in the sample, and I can still see it's intense up here. And then, if you were trying to advise somebody, you could just go in there and say, okay, well, let's see what dilution they used. And you're going to go down and say, yeah, well, he's done a 1 in 10 dilution. Now do a 1 in 100 dilution. So let me effectively do that for you. So I'm going to take the sensor out so I don't confuse myself. I'll take a clean sensor. I'll put that in. I'm going to vortex it. So here's the sample. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab one of these, because what I want to do, and somebody just asked about LIMS, a laboratory information management system. So I just want to say that it does have an API built into this system called Djuli. So I'll try and remember when I go back to Djuli in a minute, because I want to obviously show you more data. It's gone it's got what they call an API built into it. So an API means application program interface. So your LIMS system can basically poll our system and pull the data across. So it is actually really good for integration with other laboratory information management system applications. I'm just thinking aloud at the moment, so my apologies. So I think I've got that there. We've done the sample, and I need to do a further dilution on this. Sorry, that's what I was trying to do. Right. So I'm just going to vortex it really quickly to make sure that's homogeneous, because so that's, let's say, homogeneous now. Now I'll take a sample of this. There it goes. I'll put it into here, which I've done. Now I'm going to do a further dilution on that. So 1 in 10 is going to about to become 1 in 100. That goes like that. Right, we're in. And somebody just asked me if I was going to run a mayo sample, but I don't have any mayonnaise, unfortunately, here. There is definitely, if you Google FoodSense Generation 4 and mayo, you will see me testing a spicy mayo as well. Spicy mayonnaise. Mayos are not that hot, I don't think. But anyway, I'm vortexing it now. Right, so now I've got my 1 in 100. I just want to take away the rest of the samples because I know what will happen is I'll start testing the wrong thing. So this is number C, it's 1 in 100. I've got a clean sensor on there. I'm going to put I will go done. I'm going to name this up. I'll go call it C100, which I will now do. I'll go done on that. So I'm almost ready to test this one. I'll just put 50 microliters onto the just out of interest, if somebody watches that YouTube video with a mayo, you'll probably find that I've also looked at the data in Djuli as well. So I'm going to put 50 microliters onto the sensor, which I'm now doing. Right, here goes. Right, I'll go continue. Note I'm going to really make sure that I emphasize that I'm finding the 1 in 100, which is fine. And then I'll go start. And off it goes. Just out of interest, when you're doing more complicated like matrices, like things like mayonnaises, understand that this 1 in 10 dilution is actually quite forgiving, see, because because essentially we end up dominating the matrix. You can see that every time I do it, what I'm doing is a 1 in 10 dilution and sometimes a 1 in 100 dilution. So understand that 90% of the sample is actually my buffer. And that is the thing that allows you to, that's why we can then test, things like, I know I said it earlier on, but that's why we can test Mike's hot honey, for example. I mean, this is viscous and crazy. But of course, it's suspended 1 volume in 9 volumes of our buffer. So that really forgives. Now, let me get back to, so here's the result. So this is, I think I'm going to have to just have a quick look myself. 62,600 Scoville heat units. Okay. Now I want to go back to my screen. So let me just have something out of the way. So I want to just show you, I just want to show you one more feature of Djuli. In fact, I might pick up on the fact that somebody just asked about LIMS systems as well. So I go here. We looked at the 1 in 10. I said, wow, look at that. That's intense, right? It's too, I haven't diluted it enough. But the app told me I haven't diluted it enough. So I went to the next option in the app, which is 1 in 100 dilution. I did that. And we can now see, look at how intense these peaks are. So, and this is that thing when I was saying earlier on that, I haven't explained peak 1, peak 2, and peak 3 of capsaicin, but look at it. We've done 4 tests this afternoon. You keep seeing these peaks. This is the fingerprint for capsaicin. You can see the way we've analyzed it. I can go in again. I can I'm the quality manager in my facility. I can see, okay, this person did a 1 in 100 dilution. So they followed, let's say, my instructions. I just want to show you a few more interesting features of Djuli. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to compare A and B. Let's say I was making batches. I made a batch A and a batch B. And somebody said, well, how is that tracking with time? I can compare that batch A and batch B. So it's basically just extracting them now. And I can sort of tell you that Batch A was 3,800 Scoville heat units. I can tell you that batch B was uh, more like 11th. I probably picked the wrong batch B there actually, because that one's 14,000. Oh, it's because I did a 100 dilution. So let me just go back and discard that for a second. So I thought that looked wrong. B, A, because that, and then I can do a comparison, which I will do. So this also gives you the kind of analytics, as well, that, you can kind of say, you can track something over time. So I know that these were actually 3 different samples, but I'll just show you. I could have saved these reports, but I just want to sort of show you that, you could kind of go, all right. So last week we produced a batch, and we called it batch A. This week the week later in the week we produced a batch B, and then we've actually produced a batch C. And then you can sort of go in there and actually compare how your data is tracking with time. I suppose somebody mentioned a limb system earlier on. So in fact, it's got some of the features effectively of a limb system in that point. Somebody did ask about integrating into into a limb system. So we do have an API built into it, an application program interface. So there's an API here, which means that you can what's called create tokens, and make calls upon it. Somebody's asking what the buffer composition is. Unfortunately, that is proprietary. And it's also important as well, because what you'll note, because you can understand that we need that buffer to be consistent all of the time. And so we are actually, I should say, Zimmer and Peacock, we are ISO 13485. The only reason I bring it up is ISO 13485 is a medical grade ISO standard. For this system to work, obviously, we need good control on the electronics, good control on the sensors, and good control on the buffers. And if we can control those aspects, then we can end up with a good, let's say, total system. And I think I'll just do a quick, yeah. So this afternoon, I've done 3 samples. In total, I think 5 tests. I think this webinar has been going for about 39 minutes. I will send everyone a recording of this. If you do have any questions, you should see an email come out from me probably much later in the day, but there'll be a recording of this. Also, an offer of a discount if you're so looking to buy it before the end of January. And if you have any questions, I just want to say, don't hesitate to reach out to us. Okay, I have to take a small boy to soccer practice now, but I wish the rest of you to have a good day. Okay, thanks very much.